This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to a Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. I'm your host, Andrew Paterson, along with Michael Remis, the CTO, coming to us live from the Winnipeg Sports Talk Control Center. Got a big show today. Mike McIntyre is going to join us, and we'll also bring in our pal Ryan Brandt for some chat on some of the beautiful game, kind of crazy sports business news with this Super League. We'll find out more about that. Focusing on the Jets, a few days off before getting after it against the Toronto Maple Leafs later on this week. Coming off an unfortunate way to start the homestand, being shut out by the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday night. As always, Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily is brought to you by our great sponsors, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Coolbet Canada, and Aikens Lake. Let's get to it. Michael Remis, what's going on? How are you doing, my friend? How was the weekend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here. You know what? It was an okay weekend. The weather kind of sucked. Saturday was good. Yesterday, not good. But you know what? Winter's over for me. I just got my winter tires off, so I can turn the page now.
It's officially done now that the tires have changed?
Yeah, exactly. Tires are changed. I'm looking back. Thankfully, I didn't have them off last week when we had that blizzard. But we're good now. We had the Jets game Saturday, earlier start. Also had a great Saturday night watching the Jake Paul event.
Oh,
and
we'll have to get to that later on for sure.
Baseball throughout the weekend. Nothing too wild though. But yeah, weekend's always good.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, we had some great news today for Manitobans. I mean, we've been seeing what's happening in Ontario and Alberta and BC right now, and I think everyone was, very, and it's still legitimately quite concerned about where we're going with the virus. But great news, people over 40 can get vaccinated now with the AZ shot at local pharmacies, and it sounds like a ton of people have taken them up on that already, including getting appointments as early as today, and I believe Mike McIntyre is one of those guys. So we'll find out more about that with Mike, and of course we'll get into the Jets game against the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday night. Reem, we had talked about this on Friday. I was getting after it with Dusty in the lock shop discussing this game, and I didn't want any part of this one because the Jets had been playing very well. Thought that they'd be up for a game like this, but there's also and I still have no idea why this is the case, but it just does seem, it doesn't matter how well a team is playing on the road. You come back for that first game at home, and there's a bit of a drop off. And unfortunately, the Jets just weren't they weren't their best on Saturday night. What can I say? There's been a few rough Hockey Night in Canada games as well for the Jets this year, to be honest. But another loss to Edmonton, and, for all of the great results they've had against the rest of the teams in the division, including the Toronto Maple Leafs, considering that this is a likely first-round playoff matchup, Jets still have some work to do to try to get one over on the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but against Edmonton, Mike Smith the last couple of games has looked like looked like the Mike Smith of a couple of years ago when he took the Coyotes deep in the playoffs. I don't know what it is for the Jets. They can't seem to generate chances. You look at the high danger chances, they simply weren't there. There were a couple. And all you need is like one mistake. Kyle Connor follows McDavid behind the net, and I think him and Scheifele, that's the play everyone's talking about. Him and Scheifele were kind of mixed up. Scheifele was covering the boards. Connor's covering the guy in front. Whoops, leaves Puljujarvi, goes to McDavid. Puljujarvi's open for like a split second. Puck's on his stick and in the net. And that was the second goal. It was 3-0, but the Jets, they're not going to win if you can't score goals, but you got to find a way to stop McDavid. They had a couple on the power play. You got to stay out of the box there. I feel like the recipe for beating Edmonton seems so easy. Just shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. Isn't it? They got not a very deep team, but easier said than done. All you need is like take your eye off the puck for 1 second, and they make you pay. So, I have no question that I don't doubt the Jets are able to beat Edmonton, but 3 in a row now for Edmonton over the Jets, and I know a lot of people are like having flashbacks to the '80s now with Gretzky, and now the 2010s with McDavid. Is that you have those feelings when you see McDavid?
I have heard a couple people mention that, and listen, if we get to the playoffs and it ends in the wrong way quickly, I'm sure we'll talk about that, but I don't put too much into one game. And honestly, you think back to those other 2 games, the 2 consecutive regulation losses. I actually liked the way they played in those games. I thought they had, comparable to, some of their better defensive performances of the season. It was just, as you mentioned, I mean, not all chances are created equal, and ones that happen to be given to 97 and 29 are going to get converted a heck of a lot more than a mere mortal in the National Hockey League. So, as I said, got a couple more games against Edmonton, and the ones that will really count will be coming up in the postseason. But nevertheless, Edmonton, I think, has some confidence against Winnipeg right now. And I got to tell you, Reem, Mike Smith has been, he really has saved the Oilers season, because you've talked about the lack of depth. You can only, squeeze so much out of a couple players at the top. But I believe the Jets have 5 goals in their last 4 games against Edmonton, and Mike Smith has been a big, big part of that. Hard to believe the guy's 39 years old.
Yeah, I know. He's been great. I thought, Smith and Koskinen coming to the season, these aren't guys that are going to get it done. And Koskinen, he got the contract, but he doesn't seem like he's the guy. Mike Smith, we were joking how Edmonton and Calgary just swapped goalies last year. Talbot for Smith. Didn't solve any of their goalie problems, but Talbot's having success now with Minnesota, and Smith's having success in Edmonton. So I didn't see this one coming. I thought Smith was kind of done, but he's looked great, especially against the Jets. But I was looking at natural stat trick and their high danger chances of the Jets. Like, it said they only had 1. I thought they had maybe 1 or 2 more. Maybe I don't know how to calculate a high danger chance. But either way, Edmonton had way more. They were giving up a couple breakaways. Hellebuyck kept them in it. He had the big stops on Chason and Yamamoto, who were all alone. The Jets had a couple chances, but it just wasn't enough to get one past Mike Smith.
Yeah, Paul Adet with a great comment. The Jets just kept shooting the puck in against Smith. He's too good at handling the puck behind the net. And again, we all know Connor Hellebuyck is the backbone of this hockey club and has been, the MVP for the last couple seasons. The one thing that Hellebuyck is not in the elite category is puck handling. And man, when you see somebody that can do the things Mike Smith does, and I think about it at the same time when I watched Mikhail Burden with the Manitoba Moose, you realize just how much of a difference maker that can be, especially in situations where, the team is sort of dumping, trying to, maintain or get puck possession in the offensive zone. Can go back the other way very quickly if you don't put it in the right place against a guy like Mike Smith.
Oh, yeah, and he's, I think he scored a goal before. I mean, this guy's an elite puck handler. I know a lot of Jets fans, when they see Hellebuyck leave the net, they're like, no, please stay in there. That's where you're best at stopping the puck. He's determined to go handle it. He's not his strength, but I mean, when you can save the pucks like he can, you don't need to be the best. But it is, it's like it is. They do say it's like having an extra D back there when you got a guy like Mike Smith who can break the puck out or go stop it. And that's kind of makes me, it's another topic, but I wish they would get rid of this dumb trapezoid for that reason. But he does add another dimension, Mike Smith.
Well, we'll talk about the game with Mike McIntyre coming up in a few minutes. And at the end of the program, we will address the incident that took place after Saturday's game. You may have heard me on the Zoom call unexpectedly. Well, unexpectedly for many of us. So we will play that for you and touch on that at the end of the program here at Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hey, Reem, before we get to Mike, one of the other, to me, the stories of the weekend was a pretty awesome story last night in Vancouver. The Canucks haven't played in almost 3.5 weeks. We knew that they were sort of being rushed into play. They didn't feel ready to do it on Friday. So they finally take to the ice Sunday night against the Maple Leafs, undermanned, come back from a 2-0 deficit and beat the Maple Leafs in overtime. Tyler Myers played 30 minutes in the game coming off a 3.5-day break. Who knows what's going to become of the Vancouver Canucks season, but I got to tell you, that was a great story, and it doesn't matter who you're cheering for. You had to feel good for that Vancouver squad after all that they've been through.
Yeah, I didn't bet on this game, but coming in, I was like, well, I got to put bet on the Leafs. There's no chance Vancouver is winning this game. They've been off. They haven't practiced. They've all been sick. Some of them had IVs. There is zero chance Vancouver is going to win. And this is why they play the games, Huss. Vancouver, not only did they have a great showing, they were in there. Braden Holtby making maybe the save of the year. We've all seen the gif of him like rolling on his back.
That save was insane.
Like scissor kicking a floating Wayne Simmons puck. Unbelievable. Tyler Myers, 30 minutes? He didn't even play that with the Jets. So, well done, Vancouver. Bo Horvat with the winner. Incredible performance. When everyone was counting them out. Look, they got those extra days off. Obviously, they needed it, and credit to them. And Jack Campbell, if you sold high on his rookie card last week at like $100, I think you're doing pretty well. I think that thing has gone down quite a bit since. And now Leafs were so sure they had their guy, maybe not as sure anymore.
Well, that's why they gave up the 3rd-round pick for Big Save Dave. I think the jury is still out on a lot of things when it comes to the blue paint with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But at least they've got that security blanket, and who knows what's happening with Freddie Anderson. One other hockey topic we should get to, and I'm sure I'll get Mike's take on this as well, Reem. Tonight, Patrick Marleau passes Gordie Howe for all-time NHL games played leader. 41 years old, pushing 1,800 games. It's been interesting hearing people discuss whether Patrick Marleau is a Hall of Famer. I don't think he was ever elite enough to be, based on like the height of his career. But at the same time, when you're talking about a 20-plus career season and passing a record held by someone like Gordie Howe, he'll certainly get some consideration down the road. But pretty incredible longevity for Pat Marleau, who will break that record tonight.
Yeah, he's been steady. He's never been like a top guy. He's never going to be a guy you take in your first round of your fantasy league. But he's been very good for his entire career. He's played on Team Canada at the Olympics. I mean, he's been to a Stanley Cup final with San Jose. I don't know if he's elite, but I think based on, the longevity he has, I think if you get named to a Team Canada Olympic team, you're one of the best players in the league. So he's definitely, the way that the NHL Hall or the Hockey Hall of Fame is, I think he'll probably get there eventually, but I don't know if he's like a lock. But yeah, he's been a very good player a long time, and amazing to see. That's pretty incredible. Most games played. You don't really think of him like that. We also have to wonder how many more games he would have played if he didn't go through, 2 lockouts and a shortened season. So it could be even more.
Well, the funny thing is that, Gordie Howe also played 3-4 seasons in the WHA. So, I mean, at pro games, it is truly stunning. And you wonder whether this is the end of the road for Marleau this season, or maybe he thinks he's still got some gas left in the tank. We'll get to it all coming up with Mike McIntyre. And as I mentioned, Ryan Brandt's going to join the program a little bit later on. Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily is always brought to you by our friends at Knott Auto Corp. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? Pop down and see them in their incredible selection of Tesla vehicles and so much more at Waverly and McGillivray. And if you're in a lease that you'd like to get out of or looking to move on from a current vehicle, talk to them about their very successful consignment program to get you top dollar for your vehicle. Pop down Knott Auto Corp, Waverly and McGillivray, or online at knott.ca. And, of course, our friends at Boston Pizza. I went by, actually met DQ Nick on the weekend for a beer outside on the patio, safe, outdoors. It was just great to be back there. People seemed to be having a good time before the hockey game. And, of course, we had the pizza pairs there and called our shot. You can do that, any Molson product. Any Pizza Pairs order, you'll get a contest ballot. You can win instant Boston Pizza gift cards, a custom-made outdoor rink for next hockey season in your backyard, or even a VIP NHL experience. So it's always a great day for Boston Pizza. Tell them that the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. All right, let's get to some hockey talk and welcome in our good friend from the Winnipeg Free Press, Mike McIntyre. Mike, what's good? How's the weekend, buddy?
The weekend was good, and Monday is off to a terrific start, Huss. The best news of this Monday, I'm getting vaccinated this afternoon.
Wow. Oh, so you believe in that stuff, eh? Interesting. That's good. No, I'm joking.
Manitoba, of course, the big news earlier today is they lowered the eligibility to 40 and up for the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I managed to snag a 3:30 vaccination this afternoon. So looking forward to getting jabbed. And,
hey, let me ask you this for folks that were just learning about this today or hearing about it. What did you do? How difficult was it to get signed up?
It was an absolute breeze. The government of Manitoba, they actually have on their website, you can go and see every pharmacy, every medical clinic in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, in fact, that has vaccine as we speak. And so I actually just picked the closest pharmacy to my house, which is about 3 minutes away. Called them up. They said, absolutely, we have vaccine. We have appointments. When do you want to come in? Anytime between 3:30 and 6. So, and then they said, if you know other people 40 and up who want to come, by all means, let them know. So I have a cousin who's 50. She's actually going to come with me to get vaccinated. My wife is a frontline worker. She got vaccinated and her second dose a few weeks back. But yeah, it's great news, and it's a happy day to see my social media feed, Twitter, Facebook, is filled with people that I know personally who are in that 40 and up range, who have all secured appointments, whether it's today or in the next few days. So a lot of happy folks out there, and I guess the quicker we can get these needles in arms, Huss, maybe the quicker we can return to some sense of normalcy here in society.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I know people have different viewpoints and whatnot on all this. To me, just this is the pathway of how we're going to get back into stadiums and back into hockey arenas and back out at the ballpark this year. So the sooner, the better. Jets made it back home on the weekend. Part of me thinks you could almost see this coming, but it was a disappointing result for the club, particularly considering where Edmonton is right now in the standings. And just not a lot of things going well for the Jets. And to be honest, full disclosure, I talked before the game about how effective the penalty kill and how important the penalty kill had been recently going in. I think back to that 5-on-3 down 1-0 against Toronto that really in a lot of ways sort of turned around the game, or at least gave the Jets the opportunity to get back in it. But as far as the game on Saturday, just not the same sort of jump that, but sometimes you see that from teams coming off a long, long time on the road. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, that you hear the term scheduled loss. Some people in sports circles will throw that out. To me, Huss, and I'm not making excuses for the Jets, that was a pretty putrid effort on their part. That felt like a scheduled loss to me. You could see it coming from a mile away. Paul Maurice was already sort of trotting it out even before the game, 17-22 on the road. And the Jets had played some pretty good hockey as of late, punctuated by that effort on Thursday night in Toronto. It just felt like they were due for a letdown. And, the guys coming home, they hadn't seen their families barely for the last month or whatever, longer, really. They know they had a big break coming up. The break that got extended by another day, of course, with the news on Friday that they wouldn't play the Leafs on Wednesday this week. That would be pushed to Thursday. So these guys knew they had time off coming. They're probably dealing with all the usual things that you deal with when you come back off a long road trip. And it just felt like if ever there was a game that was kind of going to get overlooked, it was that one. Now, you'd like to think that these guys are pros and that they could overcome that, but they're human beings. And so I'll give them a pass. I won't judge them too harshly by what went down. I think, it's that time of year where we probably should caution against maybe getting too high. And a lot of people were really high after that win against the Leafs, a pretty dominant victory on Thursday, but also avoid getting too low. I mean, this is the home stretch of a unique regular season. And, you know, they want to obviously be playing their best hockey as they get set going into the playoffs. So I won't read too much into it. I will, however, I guess, say that there's some reason for concern that the team that they're very likely to play in the first round has now beat them 4 straight times in regulation, that being the Oilers. And maybe most alarming is that the Jets have only scored 5 goals in those 4 games. You know, I think when we talk about the Oilers, I often talk about, well, their weakness is their blue line and their goaltending, that they should be able to be exploited. For whatever reason, 4 games in a row now, the Oilers have been able to put the clamp on the Jets, and they only have 2 more regular season games left next week to maybe try and get it figured out before they really start to count.
Well, I'll say this, and I mentioned this to Remis right off the top. I mean, we focus so much on Draisaitl and McDavid for obvious reasons, but I mean, maybe the biggest story in Edmonton this season is Mike Smith and what he's done in the net for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, kind of turning back the clock, right? A guy that I think a lot of folks maybe thought was washed. And, you know, I think if you had asked a lot of Oilers fans, they probably thought Mikko Koskinen at this point would probably be the guy. Koskinen's an afterthought now. Mike Smith is having a terrific season. He's had a few bumps in the road this year, but you know what? Connor Hellebuck's had a few rough nights as well. I think with the unique schedule, the compact nature of it, teams are going to lay eggs every now and then, right? I look at Boston. I mean, what did they get blown out 8-1 a couple weeks back? Like, you're going to have nights where you just don't have anything in the tank, and you're probably going to end up being made to look foolish. But the Oilers, to their credit, and I think this comes from a head coach who's a proven winner. We know Dave Tippett. I mean, look at what he was able to get out of some of those Arizona teams, right? Didn't have a whole lot of talent. He's got a hell of a lot more to work with these Oilers, but he's got them playing a defensively responsible game. And, you know, I'm not sure how they're doing it, putting Draisaitl and McDavid together on a line. You'd think that would leave the opportunity to exploit the rest of that roster. And yet, you know, the Jets haven't been able to do that so far. And as I said, they better try and figure that out by the time we hit mid-May, where they potentially are going to have to beat these Oilers 4 out of 7 if they want to move on.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. The results are going to need to change if they do want to play deep into the postseason. And it's hard to imagine, you know, not having to go through the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs. I mean, right now, Mike, the way we're looking at, especially with the results of the weekend, it does seem more and more likely that the 2-3 matchup is going to be Winnipeg and Edmonton. And in some ways, these teams, I think, will be still feeling each other out in those final 2 games before we get to a best of 7.
Although I'll say this, Huss, I mean, if the Leafs don't get their act together here, and they've lost 4 in a row, a couple of them in overtime, maybe Edmonton ends up passing both Winnipeg and Toronto and taking first, right? And maybe we get a Leafs-Jets first-round matchup as the 2-3, you know, not out of the realm of possibility. I guess the Jets also could get hot here. They do have Toronto, you know, a few more times. Maybe the Jets could pass the Leafs and they get first. I ran a Twitter poll a couple of weeks ago, had almost 3,000 respondents. And I asked my Twitter followers, who would you like to see the Jets play in the first round? Maybe not surprisingly, I think 55%, so the majority said Montreal. That's the 4th place team. They are a team, though, Montreal, that the Jets have had some issues with in the past, not so much this season, but historically. But, you know, so if you're the Jets, I don't know that it matters all that much, first, second, or third. You're going to have to beat 2 of Toronto, Edmonton, Montreal to get out of this division. And I guess the order that you face them, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? I will say this, though, Huss. Would the Jets be better off finishing 3rd and starting the series on the road? These guys are road warriors. They have the best road record in the NHL. And, you know, there really is no home ice advantage this year with no fans other than the ability to have last change. But for whatever reason, Paul Maurice and company have actually played better when they don't have the last change. You almost wonder sometimes if they overthink it when they're on home ice. So maybe finishing third, if the Jets end up falling behind Edmonton and Toronto, maybe that's not the worst thing for a team that thrives on the road.
No, I'm with you. And I think the 55% that were voting for the Habs were both voting for the matchup, but also voting that they want to see the Winnipeg Jets win the North. And, I am with you. In a Winnipeg-Edmonton series, don't really think that home ice will matter very much. There is that carrot of winning the division, the 1 year the Canadian teams are going head-to-head. I mean, I think that banner would be more meaningful than any other division banner that would be up in any other NHL rink, just because of the unique nature of what everyone's been through this year. Yeah. But at the same time, once you drop the puck on the Stanley Cup playoffs, not a lot of that is really going to matter, Mike. It'll all be in the rearview mirror, and everyone will have a clean slate.
Everybody's record goes to 0-0 come mid-May, so you're right. And again, you look at the lineups that they've dressed here. I mean, the Oilers, they're without Nugent Hopkins right now. The Jets without Blake Wheeler. When they beat Toronto last week, Toronto without Austin Matthews. They don't have Nick Foligno. Again, I'd caution against reading too much into game 45 or 46 of what's been a really unique, compacted regular season. But I think a few Jets have said this, you don't want to limp into the playoffs where then you have to flip the switch. We kind of saw that around here, didn't we, Huss? A couple of years ago when the Jets limped into the playoffs against the St. Louis Blues and got run over by a Mack truck, a team that was the opposite of limping into the playoffs. They were flying into the playoffs, and they carried that all the way to a Stanley Cup victory. So, these last 11 games, it's going to be a chance to try and get your game where you want it to be. And I think aside from the other night's stinker, the Jets like where their game has been as of late. They're getting Blake Wheeler back. They'll work Jordy Ben probably into the lineup here a little bit. We might get another look or two at Ville Heinola. And you'd like to sort of optimize what your best 18 skaters and how they'd be configured would be going into the pre-start postseason. The other thing, of course, stay healthy, right? You'd hate to see a guy get hurt here in these last 11 games, especially if it's a significant player. So I think you got to keep that in the back of the mind as well. Everybody wants to stay healthy.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Thinking back to Saturday, I was on talking with Kelly and John Shannon beforehand. We were talking about Wheeler, and I still am totally on board if they want to give Wheeler another couple days off. I mean, right. You want the captain to be as healthy as he possibly can be when they just start the playoffs. Although I can't help but now, retrospectively looking back at that game last night, the jolt of having Blake Wheeler back in the lineup might have been very helpful to a Winnipeg Jet team that was sort of looking for a spark for the majority of 60 minutes.
So let me ask you a question, Huss. Jansen Harkins, he has to play 4 more games this season in order to be eligible to be exposed in the expansion draft. If Jansen Harkins doesn't play 4 more, the Jets are in a world of trouble. That they would have to either expose a guy that they would otherwise be protecting, or they'd have to do something like re-sign Paul Stastny, Matthew Perreault, Nathan Thompson, or Trevor Lewis, who would all meet the eligibility requirements for having played enough games this year, and the Jets would then expose one of them. And I don't know if people realize this right now. If you look at who's projected to be protected by the Jets, Wheeler, Scheifele, Dubois, Connor, Ehlers, Kopp, Lowry. There's your 7 forwards. The only forward that is signed beyond this season that has played enough games right now is Mason Appleton, who I think with Lowry re-signing, we can all agree there's a good chance he's going to get exposed. But they don't have another player right now under contract next year who's played enough games. And that's where Jansen Harkins is interesting to me. If he plays 4 more down the stretch, he checks off that box. If he doesn't, the Jets either have to expose one of those 7 guys, or as I say, they'd have to re-sign one of their pending UFAs in Stastny, Perreault, Lewis, or Thompson, and one of those guys would. So that's something to watch for. I mean, if Blake Wheeler comes back next game, and I kind of expect he will, is Harkins automatically coming out, or do they find a way? Is Kevin Cheveldayoff in Paul Maurice's ear saying, hey, Paul, we got to get Jansen in at least 4 more games here, or you're making life really difficult for me?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is something to think about. To be honest, I mean, I have looked at this situation and, before Wheeler got hurt, thought that there was no way that Jansen Harkins, the math didn't work out. He wasn't
Right.
going to get in enough games. Now, that's changed a little bit right now. But honestly, I have a feeling the plan all along would be that if they're in that situation, go to Trevor Lewis or Nate Thompson and say, hey, it's been a great year. Here's some security for next season. Whatever, we're going to re-up you to a one-year deal, and you're going to be exposed to Seattle, and most likely you'll be a member of the Winnipeg Jets. There is a pretty simple out on it,
Yeah.
but again, it's just one more complication for the general manager, Mike, of something that you probably would prefer not to be forced into doing it because of games played.
Well, look, and Lewis and Thompson have been, pretty nice pieces on that fourth line. Paul Maurice plays that fourth line 10 minutes a night. Lewis and Thompson are killing penalties. You mentioned, Huss, how the Jets' penalty kill has been a lot better as of late. Lewis and Thompson, I mean, Trevor Lewis had the big shorthanded goal from Thompson the other night on the road trip, right? So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility anyways that the Jets might look to re-sign one or both of those guys. Look, they're not commanding big money, right? They'd still be somewhere near league minimum for next year. And so, right, that's probably a pretty good plan B that might already be in the back pocket anyways. Stastny and Perreault are interesting to me. I mean, both guys are having pretty nice seasons. There's no chance they come back at the same salary that they're playing for this year. But I do wonder if potentially one or both of those guys does come back, albeit at a much, discounted price. And look, we saw Adam Lowry talk the other day about guys maybe taking a little less with the idea of keeping the band together as much as possible. Might we see a Paul Stastny or a Matthew Perreault say, you know what? Sure, maybe I could go get a little more money here or there, but I love the fit here if the Jets want me back, so that's not out of the possibility either.
Yeah, and to be honest, I've been so impressed with Trevor Lewis. And you hear it from his teammates, and you hear it from the coach. And it was interesting. Was it Maurice? Maybe it was on Saturday before the game. And I had a long answer about the team and how they come together and what's different about this year. And he mentioned about the additions of the veterans that they've brought in. And again, we know that Paul Maurice loves to lean on those veteran players, but you want to have the right kinds of veteran players. And I didn't know a lot about Nate Thompson other than he was very well traveled. I did know that Trevor Lewis has a pretty impressive pedigree of playing important roles on championship teams. And I don't think that, listen, would you love a couple more goals? Sure, I guess. But I mean, comparing this year's fourth line and I think just the general confidence that people have when that line is out there as opposed to previous incarnations of the fourth line over the last few seasons, I don't even think it's close. I mean, this is the most reliable group Paul Maurice has had in a long time. And you've seen it the way he plays them, far more than the other groups in the past, as well as in key situations, often late in close games.
Well, when the playoffs start, Huss, and the Jets still have a lot of inexperienced guys. They have some young guys in the room, whether we're talking, the Logan Stanleys and Mason Appletons and the Jansen Harkins, Ville Heinolas, guys like that. They'll be able to look around the room, and there is somebody in that room right now that's won not one, but two Stanley Cups. And yeah, Trevor Lewis wasn't a superstar on those Los Angeles Kings teams, but he's been there, right? He's been through the battle. He's seen what it takes. He no doubt has stories and experiences to share. And I don't know if you can put a value on having someone like that in the room. That's something that these Jets have not had a whole lot of, right? Dustin Byfuglien was a cup winner. Andrew Ladd was a cup winner. But the Jets, you look up and down the lineup in their decade here in Winnipeg, they haven't had a whole lot of Stanley Cup champions on this roster. And Trevor Lewis has that ×2 to his name.
He does. And you know what? What's also interesting, if you want to think about those cup teams in 2012 and 2014 with Los Angeles, I mean, those teams were, they were 1 to 12 deep. I mean, they rolled 4 lines. I mean, even if you were a bottom 6 player on the Los Angeles Kings, you were playing every fourth shift. You were going out from Daryl Sutter in pretty key situations. And I think all of that, like that, I think is what the Jets hope to be by the time we get to the postseason. A team that can go out and roll 4 lines and have them all be affected with their with the roles that they've been given by Coach Maurice.
And you know what? You make a great point, Huss. I wonder if we haven't seen Paul Maurice show his hand just yet. And why would he at this point? The Jets aren't in a dogfight to make the playoffs. They've got their playoff spot essentially secured. If you're Paul Maurice, even in these last 2 games against Edmonton or these games against Toronto or the game that they have left against Montreal, why would you necessarily show your hand? If you have ideas on how you think you can beat these teams, and maybe it means moving some pieces around, maybe it means going a different direction with your defense pairs than you've done most of the season, I don't know that you'd want to tip your hand to that just yet, right? You'd want to save that for the playoffs. And so I do wonder if Paul Maurice has a trump card, if you will, up his sleeve, and that we might not see, you know, some interesting movement happen between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs.
Well, let's talk about that on the blue line, because I think the coach essentially told us that there would be some different looks. They got Billy Hainela in for 1 game. Logan Stanley went back. Jordy Ben is here now. How do you see that being handled? Like, never mind, like in the final week of the regular season. Let's talk about these games against Toronto. I mean, do they stick with that same lineup, or are we going to see a little bit of a rotation over the course of the next few weeks on that 6th defense spot?
Well, you know, one pair I keep coming back to that, to me, we haven't seen nearly enough of this year is Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello. And I do wonder if you're Paul Maurice. I mean, you saw Morrissey and Poolman. I thought they had a good start the other night, a few good shifts early. Tucker Poolman had a real rough night, I thought, especially out there against McDavid. You know, Connor McDavid's had, all 7 games, multi-point games against the Jets. Like, he's eating the Jets for breakfast and lunch and dinner, and then he's having dessert as well. And I just wonder, you know, if you're trying to load up a pair, to me, Morrissey DeMello is the way to go as opposed to Morrissey Poolman. So there's one move that I think if you're Paul Maurice, maybe you keep that in your back pocket, whether you try it between now and the end of the season again, or you know that that's something that you've seen in short spurts in the past and you go to it. And I do wonder where a guy like Billy Hainela does factor in. I thought he was perfectly fine in Toronto the other day. Obviously, the Jets played a really good team game. He was part of that. There were no glaring errors or anything that stood out. Of course, he came out of the lineup the very next game. I do suspect we're going to see him back in at some point. And, you know, just based on things Kevin Cheveldayoff has said, based on what the Jets did, or in this case, really didn't do at the trade deadline, he's another kind of ace in the hole that I wonder if the Jets are kind of waiting to really unleash, if you will. So a couple of interesting plays. I guess we'll see how Jordy Ben looks. You know, whether I would assume he takes Stanley out and they probably start him with DeMello. Dylan DeMello is kind of the guy that plays with everybody right now. But yeah, I mean, some moving parts for sure. And I think mostly on the blue line, as you point out.
You know, it's funny. I mean, we've talked before. I've been incredibly impressed with Logan Stanley and what he's done this season. He's probably been the most pleasant surprise of the year for the Winnipeg Jets. But I didn't think he had his strongest game on Saturday night. And, you know, I'm very interested, particularly on the younger players, and maybe more so Stanley, because we've been seeing him night in and night out up until this last game, how he will be able to handle, in particular, being in and being out. And, you know, along with Ben and Billy Hainela, how each of them, you know, rise to their opportunities, because they'll only be playing a certain amount of games. And I think there really is a level of competition to show Paul Maurice, like, no, you can't take me out of the lineup. You need me.
Well, let me throw one other name out to you, Huss. And he's a guy that I've been impressed with pretty much from day one, but I think he looks to me like he needs a bit of a rest, a bit of a breather, and that's Derek Forbort. I don't want to say he's hit a wall, but it feels like he's a guy, he's logged big minutes. Him and Neil Pionk have been the only pair that has stayed together pretty much from training camp right through, you know, these first 45 games. And they often are the pair that's been put out there against the other team's best. He's blocked a ton of shots, a lot of penalty killing minutes. To me, Derek Forbort's starting to look a little worn down. And so I do wonder, when we're talking about, working guys like Heinola and Ben in here in these last 11 games. Maybe we see a couple games where Stanley stays in along with Ben or Heinola. Maybe Derek Forbort gets a night off or two, again, just to give him some rest, with the idea being that you're going to want to use him come the playoffs, and you'd like the best version of Derek Forbort. If that means a Derek Forbort that's been given a few nights off here rather than playing 11 games in the next 20 days or whatever it's going to be, then so be it. So I think you have some options for sure. And again, a big part of that is the flexibility that you're not in a tooth and nail fight to the finish just to make the playoffs. You already have the comfort of knowing you're in. Sure, first place would be great. And I don't expect the Jets to concede that. But I think there's ways to maybe optimize some rest while also trying to still, put your best effort forward every night.
Mike McIntyre, the Free Press, with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. You mentioned Maurice potentially playing a trump card at some point that he's still holding right now, and James Robinson brings it up in the chat. Will we see Morrissey and Pionk together at any point? And what do you think a situation would create those two guys going out together, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we could for sure. We've seen it, I think, in very small doses. Paul Maurice has run that group sometimes late in games, those two when they've been chasing offense, if they're behind. And we've also seen it, I think, sometimes the last shift of a period. I've seen it where he'll throw Pionk with Morrissey for the final 45 seconds. I remember one time in particular, I don't remember which game this was, but it was fairly recently where they threw them out and the Jets gave up a goal. I mean, that's always the risk. You're putting, a couple guys that certainly are your two, I think, high-end defensemen that you have, but, maybe almost a little too similar sometimes in the mindset there. And so, I think if you're all things being equal, I don't know that we'd see that at the start of a game, but certainly that would be one card that you'd play if you're in need of a goal and you shorten your bench, right? And you're now trying to press late. For sure, we could see Morrissey and Pionk together.
Hey, Mike, I want to ask you about Matthew Perreault for a minute, because you mentioned the season that he's having. And, I mean, I, like many people, thought Perreault was pretty much at the end of the road at the end of last season and wasn't sure. And we knew that, they were looking, if there was a taker for that salary, he probably would have been elsewhere, and that wasn't the case at, over $4 million at this point in his career. But he's been playing some really good hockey this year in a number of different spots in the lineup. But again, we're also talking about a guy on the other side of 30 in a flat cap world. Considering the season that he's had this year, what is out there for Matthew Perreault in the off season?
Yeah, so I mentioned 55% of my Twitter responders want the Jets to play the Habs in the first round. I can tell you 100% of Matthew Perreault and probably Pierre-Luc Dubois would welcome, because I think, those guys have had their moments, and Matthew Perreault especially, I think he's played his absolute best hockey this year, not only against Montreal, but in Montreal, right? Like, he seems to really thrive when he's playing against his home province, and same with Pierre-Luc Dubois. But you're right. You bring up the point about flat cap. I don't think there's a whole lot out there for Matthew Perreault, and that's why I do wonder if there's not potentially a future fit here. I think he's proven, Huss, that there's still a little bit of gas left in the tank. Like, he's not done. It's not going to be a case where he can't even get a contract after this year, and short of a professional tryout with some team, he's got to choose between playing in the AHL or hanging them up. I think there's an NHL job out there for him, but we're probably talking something along the lines of the Trevor Lewis or the Nate Thompson, something in the $1 million range. And if you're Matthew Perreault, who's got a family, Winnipeg he's been here now, I think 7 seasons. I could see a situation where it just is such a good fit that he might forego kind of really looking too far. And sure, maybe you could squeeze another couple 100,000 out of a team here or there. But, are you going to a team like Ottawa, who's still a couple years away maybe from being a contender? Like, if you're Matthew Perreault and you believe in this group, and if you're the Jets and you like what Matthew Perreault brings, I just think there's a good fit there beyond this season.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, Perreault is one of
I think we lost the audio here, Huss. I don't know if you can hear me, but
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Huss, you gotta. I think your microphone came unplugged.
Are we back now?
yeah,
Yeah,
I can
you're
hear
good.
you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, I really did not think that, there was going to be a long-term future beyond this season for Perreault, but the way he's played this year, the way he fits, and the fact that, I think he would be open to trying to continue on with this group, as long as he's, comfortable with the role that he's in. The only one thing I think from an organizational standpoint, I mean, you do eventually want to get guys like Gustafsson, Harkins in regularly, or who's there, but considering what the cost is and what Perreault has shown this year, I think he's completely changed the possibilities for being around here past this season with the way that he's played.
For sure, and that's the juggling act, I guess, for Kevin Shoveldayoff and Paul Maurice. You mentioned Harkins, you mentioned Gustafsson. Christian Vesalainen would be another guy who I think, is just waiting for a chance to maybe show that he can be a regular. I'll throw another name out there, Huss. That's Cole Perfetti, who's having a really nice season, very quietly with the Manitoba Moose, a guy that shouldn't even be allowed to play in the AHL right now due to his age, if not for the fact the OHL wasn't playing. I think he's had like 3 multi-point games in his last 4, something like that. Maybe Cole Perfetti breaks into this Jets lineup eventually on the wing, as opposed to up the middle. You look at the Jets now, they have Scheifele. They just re-upped Adam Lowry. They've got Dubois. We don't know what happens with Paul Stastny, and David Gustafsson is a center as well. Like, you wonder where's the fit there potentially at center, and could Perfetti come in as a winger? I think that's probably a decent place to start. So for sure, you want to find ways, if you think those guys are ready, the Vesalainens, the Perfettis, the Gustafssons, the Harkins. Keep in mind the Jets are going to lose somebody to Seattle, whether it's Mason Appleton, whether it's Logan Stanley, whether it's somebody else. They are going to lose a player. So that potentially moves everybody up a spot on the depth chart, either at forward or the blue line. But yeah, that's the balancing act, right? You want guys that you think can help you win now, but you also want to be keeping one eye on the future as well.
Mike, as it pertains to the deadline, the one thing that didn't happen at the trade deadline was, any significant assets going out. The Jets still have their first-round pick. We've talked about the uncertainty of the draft this year. Might Kevin Shoveldayoff just do exactly what he did in the Vegas expansion draft and utilize that assets and keep Mason Appleton here and say, you know what, we want you to take Nate Beaulieu or somebody that maybe doesn't figure into their plans for next season?
So let me throw out a hypothetical. If you're a Jets fan, or if you're Kevin Shoveldayoff, would you offer your first-round pick, Sami Niku, in exchange for taking somebody not named Logan Stanley or Mason Appleton? If that's the price to pay for keeping Appleton and Stanley, and as you say, Nate Beaulieu or somebody else, would you be willing to pay that price? And if I'm the Jets, I think the answer is yes. Now, would Seattle jump at that? Would a first and a Sami Niku be enough to then take somebody that isn't, the player that you want?
Do you think it would take more than a first? I mean, even a lower first-round pick, I would imagine if you're Ron Francis, you're doing that all day long. And maybe it's here's the first, and Sami Niku's the guy we want you to take. I would think that, his value, again, he's going to end up having to be waiver. Like, once you get out of this taxi squad era, at some point you're going to, have to have players that are unprotected. But I mean, I honestly think that I would imagine that the first round pick alone, just considering what the market was last time. I mean, remember the Jets gave up their pick, but they still got one, I think 12 or 13 spots later in the first round.
Yeah, they switched their spots. And of course, that pick turned out to be Nick Suzuki, that Vegas picked, who now plays, of course, for Montreal. So you're right. I mean, the Jets, the first round pick is likely going to be a very late first round pick, given where the Jets are going to finish. It's probably somewhere in the 20s, right?
31st, Mike, 31st.
I don't know if the President's Trophy is still up for grabs, but we'll see. But although you win the Stanley Cup, I think you automatically move to 31st, right? But yeah, I mean, maybe that is it's a crapshoot this year, right? What is the value of a draft pick in a year that you haven't seen a lot of these guys? So maybe Seattle asks for more, but for sure, I do wonder if that's not something that the Jets would consider. If you believe that Logan Stanley and Mason Appleton are worth a first-round pick right now, what they bring to your team now and going forward, and I would argue that they do, for a team that's trying to win sort of in the here and now, that's a deal that I'd make every day of the week.
Mike McIntyre with this here. So before you get your shot this afternoon,
Yes.
fill us in on what you've got cooking in the Free Press coming up this week before the Jets get back on the ice on Thursday against the Leafs.
So I mentioned him a few minutes ago, and Jets fans may be interested in reading the column that I'm writing today. It'll be in tomorrow's Free Press, kind of re-examining the Pierre-Luc Dubois for Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic trade. It's basically 3 months now, almost to the day, since the trade was made. And it was a trade that I think at the time people said, hey, this could be a win-win for everybody. I'm going to take in the approach that right now it's not looking like a win for any of these guys. I think Jets fans would like to see more from Pierre-Luc Dubois. I know I would. And certainly you look at Laine and Roslovic, who's had, I think, a little more success. But Columbus isn't going anywhere, right? And so I'm kind of looking at the blockbuster now a few months later through a bit of a different lens and kind of asking the question, when are we going to see Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Pierre-Luc Dubois that I think Jets fans hope they were getting?
What do you think the shelf life is on the discussion of this trade in Winnipeg? 10 years, 15 years?
It's going to be a very, very long. And look, we still debate the Evander Kane trade, right? And so for sure, and this was a bigger deal, for sure. So I think we'll be debating it. Huss, we'll be in in a retirement residence, you and I, 20, 30 years from now, and we'll be having this discussion still then.
Hey, Mike, all the best. Get that shot in you this afternoon and be well. Thanks for doing this. We'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, there he is, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. I'm looking forward to bringing Ryan Brandt on. And as I mentioned, we will be discussing the post-game incident from the Zoom call with Ken Wiebe later on in the program. As always, Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily brought to you by our friends at Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway and 650 Rally and EK. Royal Sports, family owned for over 35 years in Winnipeg, is the sports superstore. Whether you're getting ready for spring, soccer, baseball, bikes, fitness equipment, and running shoes, they've got it all, not to mention the best athletic apparel selection and licensed merchandise in the city. Pop down to Royal Sports. Tell them your boys from Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. And after you hit Royal, maybe you grab a Blizzard on the way home from one of the Nick and Nikki DQs. Great to see Nick on the weekend, and congratulations on their big move. DQ Niverville, DQ Polo Park, Dairy Queen St. Anne's, and Dairy Queen Northgate, the franchise leader. Grab your cakes, grab burgers, ice cream. It's always a good time for Dairy Queen, but especially now that it's getting a little nicer outside. All right. Huge news in the world of sports yesterday, and this caught me by surprise. I'll be honest, I don't pay too close attention to many of the bigger soccer leagues in the world before they get down to, crunch time. But the story of this formation of this European Super League is sending shockwaves, around the planet, really. And the reaction has been absolutely stunning. And it's always fun to bring Ryan Brandt on the program, but especially if we've got some big soccer news. So let's get RB in here now with CGOB. What's going on, Ryan? Great to see you and talk to you again, buddy.
What's happening, Huss? New studio today, so I'm moving my way around the apartment. I'm getting to know new areas from staying at home so much now.
Well, new studio and a new fresh look. Can we talk about this shirt for a minute?
Yeah, well, anyone that is a fan like me of the Arizona green teas, 99-cent cans, that is that look I'm sporting today. So this isn't hashtag sponsored, but it's a comfy shirt. So and I love the look of it. So I used to when I was in college, I had a mini fridge, Huss, and I went to Costco and I bought an entire flat of those Arizona iced teas, and I probably crushed like one a day. I don't know if I can even drink a whole can now, but they're still delicious. So shout out to Arizona.
It's quite a flex to actually wear a shirt as a tribute to one of your favorite beverages, but I'm certainly here for it. Hey, how's things been? How are you enjoying it? I heard a couple bang-up newscasts with you on OB. How's the move been?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Just using the old voice again. It's been a fun little thing there, and then the odd getting to watch the Jets still, which has been an interesting trek into this season, and just getting to keep up with what's kind of going on out there, and hoping we get some news soon on the CFL and the CPL, and can finally get to a little bit more local sports action coming in.
Yeah, amen to that, my friend. So fill me in. What was your reaction when you heard this news? And maybe for folks that are unfamiliar of it, give us a little 411 on what this announcement was. The biggest European soccer clubs breaking away to form a super league. I can't remember anything that created this much vitriol online in a long, long time from fans.
Yeah, I think if you don't follow European soccer, you don't realize that like this stance of these teams and these players is probably bigger or as big as NFL or hockey in the way that the blind loyalty at a lot of these clubs. But yeah, so basically what's happening is 12 clubs that consider themselves, because if you look at their place in the standings, especially the English teams, are they the top 12 teams in the world right now? They certainly maybe have the most money of the other teams around the world. So my reaction of 12 European teams breaking away, forming their own little midweek super league, as they want to call it, is I guess it makes sense in a business sense. It's hard to argue with 12 of the biggest teams with the most money and the best players wanting to play each other more, and think that probably is something that will make them a lot of money through sponsorships and broadcasts. I get that. However, I didn't think this decade we'd see a worse soccer idea for the game than a World Cup being played in Qatar at a different time than normal, but I guess we've got to that point. So I understand the business sense of it, but as a soccer fan who, likes to watch a lot of these other games, and how much different maybe following European soccer is than watching the NHL or the NFL, it seems like we're getting closer to it being the exact same.
All right. Now, listen, I'm most familiar with the Premier League. You've got some of the biggest teams in there: Arsenal, Man City, Man United. I mean, would they be leaving the Premier League, or like what becomes of the other teams that aren't super enough to be in the Super League, not just in England, but around Europe?
No, it seems more that they want to keep continuing in their standard competitions right now, but maybe finding a way to monetize what the brilliance of the Champions League already is for themselves, and keep all that money and sell it their own way and do it their own way. So that's where things are going to get kind of murky. That's where a lot of people will be paying attention to right now, because 3 of the remaining 4 teams in the Champions League are planning to be breakaway Super League teams. So will we end this week with PSG just being crowned Champions League or the champions of the Champions League? Possibly, because UEFA doesn't like this, because these governing bodies are going to be in it for the better of the game or whatever, but I think they're also seeing revenue going right out the door. If Man United is going to be playing Barcelona every 3rd week on a different broadcast agreement and monetized in a completely different way, it's really, really murky stuff. And there's going to be some fights, I'm sure. I'm sure there'll be legal action threatened in both directions. So it's one to really pay attention to. And I think I'm one of many fans conflicted, because my team is Tottenham, who are one of these 12 breakaway teams who sit 8th, 9th, I think 9th now in the Premier League. And we're going to break away because they won't be in the Champions League next year by that account. So these are the kinds of weird things that are coming out of it. But yeah, it's still really murky stuff. And I don't think we're seeing the end of this just from the news that broke on the weekend.
Yeah, well, in Tottenham, didn't they just whack Mourinho too? The always confident Jose Mourinho as their coach?
Nah, not good for the documentary series. So that's, the special one being out the door. Yeah, not great for the doc series, but it's a team that certainly has I guess it's 7th in the Premier League. I was thinking of Arsenal, just taking a dig if the Arsenal fans are watching there, the Tottenham slightly above. But that's part of it. Like, the English teams is kind of the low-hanging fruit in this, because the big money teams have, other than Man City and Man United going 1-2, have maybe underperformed. Liverpool, Chelsea also in that kind of place. So I'm just really worried about what this means for the other teams. We all remember that great story of Leicester. The underdogs go from avoiding relegation one season to winning the Premier League the next. Will they have the ability to do that? Will anyone care as much? If you're going to pick one game a week, you might pick Man United against Barcelona to watch what Messi's going to do against one of the biggest clubs in the world, instead of putting your eyes somewhere else. So that's where I start to get a little bit worried, is what this means for the teams and the leagues that aren't going to be involved in this, because one big omission was the big German clubs, namely Bayern Munich, deciding they don't want to join what the Super League's trying to do.
Ryan Brandt with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. RB, can you remember anything in the sport that has almost immediately started a firestorm of criticism like this? I mean, even on the premier broadcast yesterday, the name escapes me. A guy just went on a rant, calling out the greed, calling it a national disgrace of these clubs. We're seeing some of the most, heavy, straight, hard statements against this from pretty much people everywhere in the sport, with the exception of the guys that run these dozen teams.
Yeah, well, the only person it benefits is the owners of these clubs trying to just monetize on their product a little bit more. And like I said kind of earlier, you understand it, I guess, from a business point of view, that that's what these owners would want to do. But is it better for the game? I say no. And I also get worried as you kind of see what this trickle-down effect is. Will other clubs or leagues benefit at all from the money that this Super League is going to bring in? What does this mean for players? Will the salaries skyrocket for these 12 teams, and the rest of the world that isn't taking part not going to be able to pay players as much? Will there be issues that kind of come from that? The development aspect of this, will clubs just want to be selling teams to Super League teams to try and make their side of the money? That's where it really just gets a little bit confusing, is how this is going to affect the clubs not involved, because I think that's who it hurts the most. And part of the fun of the game is the variety. Soccer just has so much going on that if you just take it and turn it into a 12-team league, basically, to try and attract fans, that's the only place those eyeballs are going.
Sean Murray mentioned, yes, it was Gary Neville that just eviscerated everybody involved in this. Catch the clip online if you haven't seen it. It really is something. And Tim Debehan, what's up, Timmy? Mentioned players of these super teams won't be able to represent their countries at Euros or World Cup, apparently. I don't think that's set in stone, but they actually are talking about sanctions against these teams and players. And if all of a sudden players could not represent their countries in the World Cup and the big competitions, I'd imagine that might be a deal breaker for this event, because as much money is on the line, the ability to represent your country is part and parcel of being a great soccer player. And I can't imagine many of the world's best stars would be down for that.
Yeah, that's where this big crackdown is going to be coming, and seeing how UEFA decides to react, what kind of legal action they're going to take, what kind of sanctions they'll be placing on these clubs. And like you said, kind of what does that mean for players? I think there is maybe a lesson here for UEFA to take. And I think that there is a place where fans want to see the biggest clubs from other countries facing each other more often. You get the Champions League, but you also have these situations where, if Man United doesn't have their best team and they're out early, or you don't get these opportunities as much to have your club, if you're an English supporter or a supporter in another league like Italy, and to see your club play Barcelona, Real Madrid more often and get more interplay between these teams, I think that's a good idea. The format they're trying to do doesn't seem like it's the right way to do it, because it more is a cash grab for these owners by the looks of things. So yeah, from the implications for international soccer, it's huge. And I think European soccer has to be a bit on notice too, because as we're starting to see the rise in American talent development systems in North America, and the money that keeps going into Major League Soccer clubs all the time, you have to be a little worried 10, 20 years down the road where they might be if there's too much infighting among European soccer to see what's kind of cooking in America right now.
Hey, Ryan, before we finish up, closer to home, you're hearing anything on the CPL? I mean, I imagine right now with where the virus is, especially in some parts of the country, much like the Canadian Football League, everything is just sort of on pause. But CPL, and what's the latest on our World Cup qualifying as well for our Nat team?
Yeah, things going okay for World Cup qualifying. This gives me a chance, Hustler, to toot my own horn that we were kind of nailing the CONCACAF parlays as the...
Yes!
We hadn't got
Ryan was giving me
yet.
So many winners. I cannot wait to get back into the CONCACAF qualifying on the wide world of wagering when the games are back on. You did absolutely nail it and made us both a little bit of cash.
Yeah, I had a little bit of free time. So watching the French broadcast of Haiti Belize on YouTube to see if I was nailing my picks was an interesting adjustment. But yeah, there was a lot of fun to be had there. Canada had a pretty easy run playing a team from the Cayman Islands that was having difficulties with getting into the United States. I think they were only able to bring 15 players for the match at all. And Canada had some of their big guns. Davies was playing, and They had a lot of their other guys. Kyle Laren's been looking really good and starting to attract attention elsewhere. But as for the CPL, there's teams practicing more to the west of us. The Ontario teams, York and Forge, not yet. But Ottawa, us, great on Instagram. The players are in Spain training, scrimmaging against some lower level Spanish teams. And I've seen a lot of pics on Instagram of safely touring the streets out there. So they're getting themselves ready for the season. So hopefully we'll see something cooking with the CPL soon. But as I've kind of said, I wait for a CFL announcement and then what that might mean for the CPL after that.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We'll get back to normal, at least for our sports teams, some point soon. It probably is going to take a little while. Dude, you look amazing. Great to have you on the program. Someone said, Ryan, leave some drip for somebody else, please. But you brought it all today, man. Great to have you back on the program.
This is the first time people have seen me in like a month. I just put on my best for the day. So maybe a month from now, I'll find a new shirt to wear.
You're the best, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Huss.
Right on. There's Ryan Brandt with us, our old pal from Pembina Highway, and now back on the Superstation at 680 CJOB. All right, we still have some things to get to on today's program. But before I do that, we will get to our Cool Bet Daily lines. But you know what? Our Breezy Bend Golf Report. Shout out to the gang at Breezy. Man, they're doing some great work on the course out there. Craig, maybe the best superintendent in the biz, cranking out, some changes to the course on 3 and 6. But we'll be back out there playing very soon now that the snow's pretty much gone, and it should be a great summer. If you're looking or interested in getting on the waiting list for one of Manitoba's top private clubs, find out more at breezybend.ca or give him a call, talk to Corey. He is, without a doubt, the best in the biz, the GM, great friend of the program over at Breezy. And the golf story this week was Stuart Sink, 47 years old, winning again on the PGA Tour and really winning in a blowout. There was no drama. I mean, it was even more boring than the final round of the Masters as far as you pretty much knew who was going to win. The great thing about this was he did it with his son on the bag. And, at this point in his career, Stuart Sink has 2 wins on the PGA Tour this week. And man, I missed this out. Feinberg retweeted a guy that kind of broke down the performance in Masters and then the week afterwards of majors and said it all points to Stuart Sink at 125-1 going into the tournament. Wish I did not miss that tweet before the tournament started. He did it. The scene at the end with his son who was on his bag, his other son, and his wife afterwards was one of the great moments on the PGA Tour this season. And for Stuart Sink, pushing 50 years old, going to be back at the Masters, Tournament of Champions. Really, really a great story. So congrats to Stu Sink. Zurich Classic, it's the tag team golf event this week down in New Orleans. Always an interesting, and we'll talk about that coming up a little bit before Thursday when they tee off. Let's get Michael Remis back in here. Remo, great stuff with Ryan Brandt and a nice long chat with Mike McIntyre on all things Winnipeg Jets as the team finally gets a couple days off.
Yeah, we've heard so much about the Jets schedule. They did have the Wednesday game pushed back to Thursday, so they're going to have a day off here. I know they're doing reading takes flight I'm assuming over Zoom, reading to some classes. I always wonder what it would be like if my class had a Jet read to them, how cool that would be. But yeah, I have some time to recharge. Maybe some guys need it. They've had, we've heard Paul Maurice all year talk about the grinder of a schedule, Huss. And great time for some rest as we head into the final stretch here, getting set for the playoffs. Although it seems like the playoffs in the North kind of set. Although everyone's saying, hey, Vancouver, look at them last night. If that's them after, with no practices. Imagine if they can have some practices, Huss, and they're healthy.
The Canucks, they're all rested and ready to go. Yeah, I don't know about that. But that was a great win last night, though, for Vancouver. I mean, regardless of what happens going the rest of the way, you saw how much it meant to those guys to perform the way they did in some pretty adverse conditions. And it was nice, and certainly for everyone that, would like the Jets or Oilers to be a little closer to the Maple Leafs, even missing out on that 1 point could be important as we get down the final stretch.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And look, the Jets have got important games against Edmonton and Toronto, and I love the Winnipeg-Toronto games for sure. So, a couple days, get some practices in. Maybe we'll see I wonder if we will see some shuffling of the defense. I think that's the thing to watch. Paul Maurice did mention they're going to try to work out Jordy Bennin. Ville Heinola is going to be worked in. We had a week ago today, Kevin Cheveldayoff did call out Ville Heinola in the press conference saying we got some depth here with him. So maybe we'll see him at some point as well for another game.
All right, you know what? We'll get to the games and tonight's cool bet lines in a minute. Wrench Doozer has just gone into the chat and said, did Hustler visit the Jets Zoom call on the astral plane like Doctor Strange or Scarlet Witch? It's a great question, Wrench Doozer, because needless to say, I was as surprised as anybody else was when I made a visit to the Jets Zoom call on Saturday night. I will tell you, I did the pregame show beforehand, and then with the game being moved up to 6, having Sunday off, I'm like, this is perfect. Be able to go out, watch the game. So I did exactly that. Popped by my local, had a few pops. Obviously, the game was over at about 9. Came back afterwards, and I was fooling around, probably playing Divot Derby or something like that. I'd missed many of the first interviews, so I went back to YouTube to catch Coach Maurice and, some of the players and the post-game comments that had happened a little earlier on. And needless to say, I was somewhat stunned to hear this. Remo, do we have the clip? Are we ready to go with this?
It's right here. Should I hit play?
Let's play, folks. This is from Saturday night's Jets Zoom call after the game against Edmonton.
Anyone with questions for Mark, use the raise hand function now and we'll get started. And we'll get going with Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
The thing is, I could say a lot of those same things.
Thank you, Gregor. Hustler, you got to mute yourself.
Just has maybe a little extra offensive level. I would say the
Mark,
same thing about
what's the biggest challenge of going up and trying to contain Connor McDavid?
Wait.
Yeah, it's tough. He's obviously the best player in the world for a reason. And
okay, so if you're wondering what the hell that was Gregor Buer, one of the crack media staff for the Winnipeg Jets, throwing to Ken, who was all ready to go for his first question. And when Ken was unmuted, apparently, I'm not sure whether he was getting motivated or fired up to ask a great question, Reem, by listening to some take from Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily over the course of the past week. But that's certainly what it sounded like. And maybe the funniest part of it all was the fact that my good friend, Mr. Wiebe, had the audacity to shout me out going, Huss, you have to mute yourself. I was not on the call. That was on Ken's computer, Remo.
There's a lot to take in here from that. And first of all, credit to Mark Scheifele, who kind of just sat there stone-faced, like, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to sit here. So, yeah, they go to Ken. Ken has Winnipeg Sports Talk playing in the background and says, Hustler, you got to mute yourself. Yeah, and you hear a voice in the background saying, Hustler's not on the call. I don't know if that was Gregor or someone sitting beside Ken. I know Mike McIntyre tweeted that he was laughing so hard at this, but...
Can we play this again? Can we play this again for people that missed it? Let's fire this.
Oh, hold on, you keep unplugging your microphone.
Mark, look at the WTF look on Mark Scheifele's face, as well as, and just imagine what Ken was thinking as he told me to mute myself.
Okay, let me fire this thing up again. Hold on. Here it is.
Anyone with questions for Mark, use the raise hand function now and we'll get started. And we'll get going with Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
The thing is, I could say a lot of those same things.
Thank you, Gregor. Hustler, you got to mute yourself.
Just has maybe a little extra offensive level. I would say the
Mark,
same thing about
what's the biggest challenge of going up and trying to contain Connor McDavid?
Wait.
yeah, it's tough. He's obviously the best player in the world for a reason. And
okay, first off, credit to Scheifele for just rolling with it. Part of me, and again, so now rewind to me at midnight or whatever, coming back and had a good night. I'm at home going, okay, well, let's catch up on all this stuff. If there could have been a camera on me listening to this going, wait a second, that's my voice. What the hell is going on? and then to have we do it. Now, to Ken's credit, and Ken will be back with us on Thursday where he will be able to address this. But yes, someone said, did Ken apologize? Well, yes, he owned it. And I guess he told them afterwards that had nothing to do with any of the Winnipeg Sports Talk guys being on the call. But Remo, as I said, we joked on the warm-up before everybody got blown out that we were going to put together a power poll of Winnipeg media as to who was handling the Zoom world the best and, who was, hitting the notes, doing the questions right, not having technical difficulties. I think we sort of have to change this now and we do the reverse power poll. And I think it is a runaway leader for Ken Wiebe having the most difficulties with the Zoom technology as shown Saturday night live with Mark Scheifele.
I'm actually like, what was Ken doing that we have to call Ken and get the behind the scenes? Because was he listening to like Friday's show and like hearing your hot takes on Pierre-Luc Dubois, but like who's listening to it while also waiting for Mark Scheifele to do his post game and then forgot to hit pause?
I'd like to think that he was listening to it for inspiration before he went and asked his question. In all joking aside, though, I think what had happened was he had had like, I don't know, Kenny and Rennie on or something like that.
Oh,
of course,
okay.
we subscribed to each other's channels, and maybe what happened is it ended and then kicked into a Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily video that either Ken didn't know was on, and then when the computer got muted, it immediately went to some hot take about probably figuring out where Dubois fits in the top 6 or something like that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. He was watching Kenny and Rennie, and then it auto played because it would recommend. YouTube knows that we're linked together, us and Kenny and Rennie, so it would recommend us and start auto playing.
Oh, we're linked together, all right, as was seen in this clip from Saturday night. Definitely an all-time hilarious moment. It's all good with Ken. But as I talked to him on Saturday night, he said, "Oh, man, I'm sorry. I told the guys what had happened." And I said, "Well, I'm listening. I'm watching this right now, and it is out there for all to see of you telling me to mute yourself. So, Ken, just take it from me. This will be addressed, and the truth will come out on Monday's edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. And then, of course, he will have chance for rebuttal when he joins us before the Friday edition of Kenny and Rennie on Thursday's show here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily."
Ken was trying to play it cool. Acting like it wasn't him. He's like, "Hustler, you got it. What are you doing? Interrupting the call." If only he was smooth enough to hit mute, no one would have known. People would have just thought it was you. But he just kept asking the question while you're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, how great he is on the wing.
Well, here's the binaural says, "Gotta say, it's a good thing he was listening to you guys and not something else. At least it was PG friendly." It did cross my mind. Can you, like, if that could happen, can you imagine if the wrong pop-up or something was on the computer from the press box and that was what came on? The potential is just so juicy. I can't get over it.
That's actually a valid point. It could have been a lot worse. I think it's even funnier that it was you. And RHO says, "So much for scrum lurkers." Yeah, remember scrum lurkers? You don't have scrums anymore. So like Zoom fails seems to be the new new thing.
Mitch, how do those tracks feel, Huss? No kidding. No kidding. It was hilarious.
Did Ken think that you were there? Or was he trying to play it cool and be like, and do like, "Hustler, you're screwing up this whole call"?
Yeah.
And he tried to blame you.
That is a great question. And one that can only be answered.
And the voice saying, but you hear the voice failing. "Hustler's not on the call, Ken. It's you."
Oh man,
and it's on YouTube. Everyone can see it. We tweeted it out from Winnipeg Sports Talk 7 minutes in. And again, credit to Mark Scheifele. He's like, "I've been on a lot of these dumb Zooms. I'm just going to sit here and wait for the question." He answered the question, acted like nothing happened. Didn't even laugh.
An absolute professional. You can tell these guys probably have had enough of these Zoom calls. They really just want to get in and get out and doing it. So even something as ridiculous as that didn't even garner a comment from Mark Scheifele. He was like, "Yeah, let's get down to it. I'll answer this question, and you guys can figure out what the hell's going on here."
I wonder what he thought of your take, though, Mark Scheifele. Now that
I'm surprised he didn't say, "Ken, hold on a second. Let me just hear the rest of this take on whatever I was talking about with Pierre-Luc Dubois." What would have been really funny is if it was at a different point in the show, like maybe this point of the show where there's just some nonsense, probably you laughing at something, going back and forth. That would have been quite excellent too. Although then it would have given Ken an opportunity to maybe sewer both of us as opposed to just me, whose voice was on there.
Yeah.
With that scalding hot take.
Now your name is soiled among NHL media, Huss. We
I don't
totally
know how I'm going to get over this. How am I going to get over this? This is the sort of professional adversity. Everything that's happened over the past 6 months, the adversity we've been through, just prepared me for this moment on Saturday night, being besmirched to a national audience by my so-called friend Ken Wiebe. Wow, what an incident! It would have been amazing though if that. You know, how sometimes they play the calls like live on TSN and Sportsnet on SportsCenter. Like, oh great, Scheifele's coming up. Let's go live. Let's get the first question. If that was on there, I mean, I wasn't watching afterwards with any of the live coverage. Maybe it did get out there, but it's there for everyone to enjoy permanently on YouTube at about the 7-minute mark of Saturday's post game.
I'm ready for the 30 for 30 on this. I think we're going to interview Ken. We're going to interview Scheifele, Gregor from the Jets PR. Scott Billick was next to him. Mike McIntyre and Jason Bell, I know, are dying to weigh in.
30 for 30 on the call.
I think it can be done. I can produce this together. We'll do Zoom interviews. It'll be part of it'll be the one of Jets legends for the next 20 years.
Yeah, that'll be the Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily Legends. We'll do a deep dive on this, and at some point when we have a long weekend or can't do a show in the summer, we'll just put that out as the show today, and everyone can relive a dark moment in Winnipeg media history.
Gregory Liverpool in chat's really getting on the Jets Zoom admin.
Yes.
He's been on the Jets Zoom admin. I don't know. I think it's even funnier.
This is not on the Zoom admin. This is on one person and one person only, both for what happened and running over me afterwards when questioned as to what the hell was going on. And that man is Mr. 2 holes in 1 and 1 round himself, Ken Wiebe. Yeah. Sportsnet contributor and Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily contributor and co-host of Kenny and Rennie.
Ranch Chooser says if TSN can do a mockumentary about O-Dog and the ketchup at the trade deadline show, we can do one about the call. Oh, yeah, we could definitely do a nice 3-minute thing. I'll reach out to the Jets. We'll get permission to use that in a documentary interview. We'll get Scheifele with a quick comment. Gregor, I think this thing writes itself basically.
It really does. It really does. All right. Anyways, that was lots of fun. Ken was going to be on the program on Thursday, so needless to say, this is not the last we've heard of the call incident here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. But we do have a bunch of games in the National Hockey League tonight, so let's get to the Cool Bet lines for Cool Bet Canada today. Let's see here. We have the big game tonight. Calgary Flames. Calgary lost.
Ken just texted me. He says he wants in. Should I call it?
Yeah, send him the link right now. We could have rebuttal coming right now from one Ken Wiebe live. This is how the internet works, folks. You can just get right down to business.
Oh, Jason Bell says he wants to come on. Okay, hold on. We'll bring on Ken. I'll email him the link.
Okay, perfect. We'll do that. And
while
you do that,
go through the games and I'll email.
I'll give you the Cool Bet Daily lines tonight while we arrange for Ken Wiebe to join us live on the program. All right, big one tonight out in the East. Carolina at Tampa. Tampa minus 120 favorite. Carolina plus 103. Certainly one of the games of the night. Columbus big underdogs plus 185 in South Florida. Take on the Panthers. Panthers are minus 222. Dallas a huge home favorite minus 244 against the Detroit Red Wings. Red Wings at plus 200. Chicago plus 118. Nashville favorites at home minus 139. Minnesota Wild favorites minus 154 in Arizona. Take on the Coyotes. Coyotes paying plus 130 as a home dog. You've got the Ottawa Senators, who have owned the Calgary Flames so far this season, at plus 170. Calgary home minus 204. They absolutely need to win this game, and they need to get on a run before they play Montreal 3 times on the weekend in 4 nights. And then there's those Montreal Canadiens. They're taking on the Edmonton Oilers. So Calgary will be hoping that their arch rivals can do them a favor. That's an 8 o'clock game tonight. Montreal plus 110 on the road. Edmonton back home minus 130. And the San Jose Sharks plus 195 taking on the Vegas Golden Knights at minus 233. What's going on in the ball diamond tonight? We got a number of games. The Kansas City Royals, the first place Kansas City Royals, have moved on after their 2-0 win over the Blue Jays. They are taking on the Tampa Bay Rays, minus 101 for the Royals at home. Tampa Bay is at minus 111. And the Cardinals, minus 110, taking on the Washington Nationals. And a straight-up pick 'em between the Giants and Phillies. That game gets going at 6:05. As always, our lines brought to you by Coolbet Canada. You can check out our Twitter feed at Sports Talk WPG if you want to get a code to play with us at Coolbet. All right. Let's welcome in the man who, well, provided us a lot of content over the course of the past 20 minutes. The culprit himself, Ken Wiebe, joins us now live on the program. Ken, welcome to the program. I know it was a little unscheduled. We planned to have our normal chat on Thursday, but I appreciate you standing up and facing the music right now.
Yeah.
Please, why don't you give us and our audience your version of what happened on Saturday night?
Yeah, happy to do so, Huss. First and foremost, I hope this isn't like when Mark Scheifele and Andrew Kopp had their incident. I hope you're not revoking my friendship card. But if you are, I understand completely. This was an unscheduled performance or appearance, much like your voice was an unscheduled appearance on Saturday night. In terms of context, this is one moment where you know I like to support you as much as I can. Winnipeg Sports Talk is one of my few YouTube subscriptions, but unlike what your suggestion was, I was not listening to your voice for motivation, though I have done that before, but not
inspiration, not motivation. Inspiration
and motivation. I do not use that during Zoom calls. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to me, I had the YouTube channel open, looking at just to try to gauge how many views we had on the Adam Lowry pop-up episode from Friday's signing. Somehow I went to the Zoom call and that opened, and your voice was loudly coming out of somewhere where I couldn't understand. I certainly didn't understand it was coming out of my computer. Just for context purposes, and again, I accept full blame and responsibility. No one could have been more embarrassed than myself that this had happened. I know that I have catapulted to the top of the rankings of Zoom failures after navigating this medium for the last 13 months pretty efficiently and effectively, I would have to say, in my own personal defense. I may need to consult my lawyer on this one, but I honestly had no idea what was happening. I didn't hear your voice coming out of my computer. And for a context, as I mentioned, there have been times in the past where someone had a different line open, whether it was one of the bigger companies where a different conference call was playing in the background. I have to admit, my first thought was and again, it's my fault and no one else's, but I thought perhaps that the Illegal Curve post-game show might have been happening and they were tapping into your resources of knowledge, and that maybe you were answering a question from Drew or Dave at the time. And again, Remo, this was not as simple as muting. If I had known it was coming out of my computer, I wouldn't have even had to have muted. If I had muted myself, then my voice doesn't go through in the call. Embarrassingly enough, I did notice that all I had to do, well, after Scott Billick, my former colleague from the Winnipeg Sun, who was the voice, I will reveal him and out him as the other voice who suggested Hustler is not on the call, to my right, 6 feet away. He was the one who pointed out, unfortunately, after the question had been asked and I had actually muted by that time, was able to just as simple as clicking the X of the YouTube channel that was open with Hustler's voice on it. Again, nothing but
So to be clear, yeah. When you said, Huss, you got to mute yourself, you actually, you weren't purposely running
Oh my God,
running
no,
the bus
Huss, I
over
wouldn't-
for me. No, I know.
I
just
would
to be
never do
clear,
that
You
to you
actually were mesmerized by both the take and the situation at the same time, and that was just the first thing that came out.
I think the take from you was completely fine. I just had no idea why the take was happening in the middle of a Mark Scheifele interview. Why is Hustler doing this to me? Doesn't he know this could be on national TV? Like you said, I mean, oh my God, if that had gone straight to the, Connected or Sports Center, or, again, fortunately, Hockey Night in Canada didn't have the back end of the doubleheader because, as you mentioned, sometimes that could have gone live to TV. And now I'm thinking, oh, great. The company that I work for.
What was the aftermath? What was the aftermath? Like after this happened?
Oh, no problem there.
Gillick was there.
I'm happy to embarrass myself further. Before Mark Scheifele's answer was even complete, I turned my video off in dismay immediately. I texted Gregor Buer, who was running the Zoom call, and I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what happened. And, quickly apologized. Again, the last of the public apologies goes to Mark Scheifele, who, as you mentioned, handled that beautifully. Whereas again, he must have been thinking, what is happening here? We had one other incident. Like, again, I'm not trying to deflect the blame, but we had one other similar incident early on in the year. Our pal Brian Munns was taping a live hit on the NHL network during a Blake Wheeler interview, where his voice from the corner of the press box was seeping in to the questions as well. And it was, I remember looking over in astonishment thinking, Brian, you have to be quiet. And now I've caused a similar disturbance, and I couldn't be more embarrassed. I had a pretty long streak, Huss. And again, just so that your listeners and viewers know that I'm not afraid to point the finger at myself. This was the worst public humiliation for myself since the summer of 2011, where in the middle of the, it wasn't a Zoom call 10 years ago, in the middle of the Tanner Glass conference call, I didn't know how to mute my own cell phone, and I was at a Blue Jays game right in the middle of this call, and it absolutely blew up. It probably blew up your own press conference, Hustler. It probably blew up your live press conference on Hustler and Lawless at the time, where what is that sound in the background? And what is this guy doing at the Jays game? So anyways, I was
Josh Donaldson up now.
Exactly, now batting John. Exactly. Thanks for taking the time, Tanner. What made the Jets a good fit for you? All of a sudden, there's a roar in the background. Oh man. So anyways, this is the beauty of the world we live in. Well, once again, I apologize profusely. Huss, you called me when we finished off our Kenny and Rennie postgame show, trying to get a sense of what had happened. I did my best to apologize. I wish you had seen the astonished look on my face when I had realized it was totally my fault. And as your folks have been mentioning in the chat, I would never back the bus over you in terms of trying to deflect away from myself. That's not how I roll. I certainly am very embarrassed by what had happened, and I think have apologized publicly to all parties. Certainly don't make a habit. I mean, Gregory, I also sent him a personal message to
Greg,
stop smearing the admin. This was nobody's
Zoom
fault but my own. And point the finger right at the person that is talking right now. I have apologized profusely, and hopefully someone will pass it along to Mark Scheifele that the apology is going to him as well. He handled it dutifully, but I have to say, I mean, I'm not asking for people to, pick me back up, but I was able to ask a couple more questions effectively during the Zoom call. I had to get right back onto the horse and show people that I could really handle this technology, Huss, even though it certainly did not look that way the first question out of the gate.
It was admirable. And listen, we know Gregory he's the sheriff on these streets of the internet. So he's on top of things, but yes, you are right. There is no blame to be thrown around anywhere other than squarely between the eyes of our guest that is currently with us right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. That being said, Ken, it was funny. It wasn't a big deal. I knew we'd have some laughs about it today. And we after it happened, I'm like, oh my God, that's kind of weird. And then I realized this is one of the best things that's ever happened for our show, because we are going to have some fun with it today. And you, of course, being a good sport, I knew you'd pop on. I didn't know whether we were going to do this today or Thursday. But to your credit, you faced the music early, and by the time we get to Thursday, we'll probably still make a few cracks about it, but it'll basically be in the rearview mirror.
Well, that's why I wanted to try again. This is trying to get ahead of the story, Huss. Trying to manage the message as best that I can here. I noticed you were doing an amazing job cutting a wrestling promo leading in last night, and I'm like, oh my God, do I respond now? Do I let him? I wanted to get out of the way. As you know, us in the media, we never want to be part of the story. Just want to tell the story. So I decided to bite my tongue. I knew you were having fun with it. I didn't know that it would be a character assassination, but even in that assassination, I knew that you were joking for the most part. And again,
for the all part. Just for the record.
I know. Here's the funny
part. Not 1 ounce of anger or anything. I just thought that it was funny. I couldn't believe you were such a knucklehead that happened. And I realized that we were going to have some serious laughs today on the program, discussing what happened and watching it a couple times too.
Yeah, one quick one for our pal Remo. Remo, if you actually thought that I was trying to back Hustler under the bus, come on, man. You've known me long enough. I would never do that. Even if I had realized it mid-sentence, which I obviously did not, I would never look for someone else to blame other than myself. But it's not like I can just go back on the Zoom call and say, insert myself and say, oh, hey, by the way, that's all me, my bad. I'd already hijacked the call enough. I tried to get out of the way as best that I could, but love the wrestling promo, Huss. I was watching the Stone Cold Steve Austin documentary last night. So that's why I figured I would just roll with the punches and let you continue to cut that wrestling promo. I had to play the role of the heel in this case, and it was well deserved. There's no doubt about it.
Well, you know what? All's well that ends well. And I'm just looking in the chat right now, Ken, and we have breaking news from Gregory Liverpool. I have sent a direct message to Ken to apologize. So you know what? This was basically a live mediation between all parties involved. Again, Gregor, Mark Scheifele, I had nothing to do with it. Ken's very sorry. And Gregory, you can go back to patrolling these internet streets. We don't need to worry. It was just a yellow card for Ken. He'll be back in the lineup next game.
And I love one of the things that I've been kind of pounding home on the Kenny and Rennie post games is that I'm checking the receipts. So I love the fact that Gregory was also checking the receipts on your behalf, Hustler. Everybody needs someone looking out for them. Hey. But as you know, I'm also looking out for you, and that won't change.
You got it. No, hey, Greg's had our back since day one, as do so many of us that are the folks that are with us right now. This is a great way to end Monday's show, Ken. Let me thank you for joining us today, impromptu. I look forward to our conversation on Thursday, and may you have good luck working your computer and any Zoom calls in between now and Thursday for our next visit.
Well played, my friend. Well played. Have a great week here, everyone.
Great stuff. There he is, the man himself at Wiebe's World. There's Ken Wiebe taking his medicine and joining us live on Winnipeg Sports Daily after one of the more funny Zoom incidents in this COVID era we've had from Winnipeg media. Well, Remo, that was a lot of fun. I'm not sure that could have worked out any better. Ken, live on the show to face the music on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily today.
Should I play it one more time?
Yeah, let's get it. Well, yeah, one more time, please.
Hold on, let me get it ready. I was going to say, Ken, if that was me and I was in that situation, I would have for sure. You got to do what you got to do to protect yourself in desperate times. I'd be like, Huss, you got to mute yourself. What are you're ruining the call as you're like scrambling to do it. So here, let me bring it up.
Okay, one more time.
Anyone with questions for Mark, use the raise hand function now and we'll get started. And we'll get going with Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
The thing is, I could say a lot of those same things.
Thank you, Gregor. Hustler, you got to mute yourself.
Just has maybe a little extra offensive level. I would say the
Mark,
same thing about
what's the biggest challenge of going up and trying to contain Connor McDavid?
Wait.
Yeah, it's tough. He's obviously the best player in the world for a reason, and
Poor right? He actually had to like lean his head down to make sure he was hearing Ken because of the.
He's like this. He's like leaning in so hard. He's like, "What? What's going on here?" That's good. Ken just texted me beautiful.
Yeah, no, that was a hell of a lot of fun. Wieber's a great sport, and yes, that was funny. Absolutely no issues, whatever. Hopefully, just Ken, is still in the good books of the Zoom moderator that took, unfairly potentially a few shots from people online. When, as we know, who the culprit was and how it all came down. Remo, great show today. We do have a big show tomorrow. Very much looking forward to welcoming back the sports rabbi himself, our good friend, Matt Leibel, and Winnipeg native and longtime NHLer, former Hab Dale Weiss, going to join the program as well.
Yeah, our second NHLer on the show. We had Grant Clitsome last week. We're moving on up, us. We're getting some A-listers guests like the sports rabbi as well, and we'll have him on video, the sports rabbi, because we had.
Yes, we will.
That was show number 2, which seems like yesterday, but it's like a month ago, and I didn't know what I was doing then. Now we've got a handle on things. We're under control, so we'll have the sports rabbi on.
Oh my God! We've got just a quick late breaking sponsor announcement from DQ Nick. That this was the case, but tomorrow happens to be the 20th of April.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And you know what goes great on the 20th of April? An ice cream cake. So, as per DQ Nick, 50% off all cakes tomorrow with any purchase at DQ Northgate, the 420 special. So, I don't know, maybe in for a flamethrower burger, some fries, and then take home that ice cream cake for when you're finished all of your revelry on 420.
Yeah, I can be honest. Nick dropped off some stuff for my wife's birthday last month, so we've had some Dairy Queen. We polished off Treats of Pizza last week. It was incredible. So I want to give a big shout out to Nick. Hey, because it's April, I did want to shout an anniversary. 2 years ago yesterday, it was Game 5, the dreaded Game 5, Jets Blues.
All you need to say is Game 5. Like, you don't need to say who was playing. Anything. Oh, Game 5. Yeah, we all remember. By the way, it's DQ Northgate only for that, folks. That's the that's where they're doing all the cakes. So DQ Northgate only for the 420 special.
But I tweeted out a video of the Kevin Hayes play where he's about to score and took the puck out of the opposing net, and someone's like, "Why would you tweet this?" I'll never forget the feeling after that game. I went there with my dad. We had an awesome time, at the whiteout party. Going to the game was like my first game as a fan, at a playoff game. The game ended. Like, we didn't move for like 15 minutes. You just sat there like stunned. And I think that's why you love the good times of sports, but a time like that you can sit back and laugh, but also wonder what could have been for the Jets. That was a horrible
The thing
loss.
is, and again, not to completely revisit that because it did end in misery for everyone around here.
It was horrible.
But, it was funny. We talked to Mike about, the way the Jets ended that season, and they really did sort of limp into the playoffs. And then they lost the first 2 games at home, if I'm not mistaken, in that series against St. Louis, and were up against it, and then go to St. Louis and win Game 3 and win Game 4. We're up 2-0 in Game 5. I fully believe if that Kevin Hayes puck goes in, the Jets win that game, win the series, and
win the Stanley Cup.
And we would have been.
Win, the Jets win.
Well, I don't know about the Jets winning.
Yeah.
The Blues don't, though. And then we would have been robbed of the seminal moment of Brett Hull going, "We went Blues." Yeah. The drunkest guy ever at a celebration after a Stanley Cup victory in public.
There's been a lot of them. We do like celebratory moments. I know John Quick has had some good ones as well. Brad Marchand. There's always someone at the parade. So that year Brett Hull was the guy. But I'm sorry I had to bring it up. I felt bad, but it was on my your phone shows you like pictures like this day and whatever year. So that one came up of like pictures of me before the game having a blast. So I was like, oh, I guess it is 2 years ago.
You didn't take a picture. You didn't take a picture at the end of the game of you and your dad sitting in stunned silence for 10 minutes before leaving the game.
And usually we're out of there pretty quick, like trying to get to the car. You know, we don't even stay for the 3 stars, but we sat there for a while after, just like, I can't believe what I just witnessed. Because you felt like they were gonna win, and they were like, okay, game 5, and then game 6 was a complete no-show. So it was. And then they've kind of been trying to get back to where they were before. But I'm sorry, everyone, to bring it up, but it was this day in Jets history.
Yeah, that was well. Here's to some much better anniversaries of days to come for the Winnipeg Jets going into the playoffs. Obviously, back at it on Thursday, taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And speaking of the Jets, I'm going to tease this for you. We've got a guest coming up on Wednesday's program that will be probably the most exciting guest we've ever had on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. I'm just going to tease that. I'm just going to say most of you are huge fans of this individual, and it seems like it's all working out for this individual to join us on Wednesday. So there's a little tease for you for Wednesday's show. And I'm not talking about Gary Lawless, but I think Gary might be coming on Wednesday as well. Ken Wiebe a little later on this week on Thursday, and tomorrow, the sports rabbi, Matt Leibel, and our pal, Dale Weiss. Remo, that's about going to do it for us today. By the way, I should mention our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge are out, it's 45-minute drive to Silver Falls. You're on the plane up and down, and they're on the water right away. Normally, June is the busiest month for U.S. travelers coming in. Obviously, that's not happening right now, so maybe the best time of the year to get out in the water. So if you're thinking about a great in Manitoba fishing experience, find out more online at aikenslake.com or hit Pitt up on Twitter at Aikens Lake. What's on the docket for tonight, Reem?
Oh, I actually have big plans tonight. I have MLB The Show. I get to play it at like 11 o'clock, so my PlayStation's counted down, so I'm going to have my Sweet Diamond Dynasty team going on that. So I think I'm just waiting until that. And
well, actually, we've got a thank you to give out for that to my pal Francois from Sony, who I met on Friday afterwards, and I said, hey, man, I want to buy this game for Reem, being the great partner that I am. And he says, you know what? I love the show. I'm going to support you guys. Bang. And got us a couple of copies. So I've got the other copy. If I get my hands on a PS4, I might play it myself. Otherwise, we might do a little raffle or something here on the program going forward. But I can't wait for it. And you can have a report for us tomorrow on the program as to first look at MLB The Show. The thing that I'm most excited about this is apparently there is cross-platform playing. So someone has a PlayStation, someone has an Xbox, they can go head-to-head. And that, to me, is the biggest game changer yet when it comes to these sports
that's
games.
Super cool because, we haven't been able to play, like, NHL together or anything. So MLB, I can play against anyone, and I'm looking forward to some of the new modes. I don't really play MLB that much, but being a big baseball fan, you think that I would, so... we'll see. I know I have problems, Hess. I can't tell the difference between balls and strikes in video games. So real life, I'm okay at that. I got the home run derby trophy to prove it. But on video games, it's a different story.
Yeah, well, put it this way. There will be a Hustler versus Remis special baseball head-to-head stream coming up in the future on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily outside of our normal showtime. So we'll work on that as well. But we got to get these pods up. Big thanks to Mike McIntyre for joining us, Ryan Brandt, and especially the impromptu visit from the guilty party, Ken Wiebe at Wiebe's World. Definitely a lot of fun today, folks. Thanks to everyone that's with us. If you're still here, hit that like button if you wouldn't mind. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and spread the word about Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We'll be back tomorrow. Leibel in the house, Dale Weiss, and more on the Winnipeg Jets and the upcoming CFL season. Expecting announcement on that tomorrow as well. Folks, thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow with another fun and exciting edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.